right on time.
I'm a bit nervous. I saw that there were, 45 people signed up for this.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, about 20 usually show.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay, so I can embarrass myself in front of only 20 people.
well, I don't know. I mean, they heard that the great Robert McCutchen was going to be presenting, and
Oh, okay. Hi, Dinesh. How are you this evening? Oh, he's got his headphones on.
of course, okay. For those that are on call here, I spent I've started a YouTube channel, and so I've been on this quest to figure out how to do videos, and like I've got this green screen, and Zoom is just terrible at replacing green screen. I've I've kind of figured how to do it in Adobe Premiere Rush, but I can't get Zoom to properly replace my green
You
screen.
need to get one of those new RTX 3000 series cards. Then
I've got to do what?
the new Nvidia cards, they do some
Oh,
some super processing to take out your background and all that kind of stuff. But you need to use their proprietary software, right? But apparently it does a really good job at your back. You don't even need a green screen anymore.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it does really good sound canceling also. So you can have a dog barking in the background and it cancels it out.
Nice. Well, we use Microsoft Teams at ABS, and they have some pretty decent blurring technology and replacement in the background of the background, even without green screens. I've been pretty impressed with it.
Oh, okay.
Been pretty, but the Zoom here just isn't cutting the mustard. So, but I'm all about getting a new video card, so I might just do that.
Oh yeah. If you can actually find one, right? It's just sold out all the time.
Yeah, yeah. For a while there, it was hard to find cameras and mics and all kinds of stuff. So definitely. All right. Well, we'll give everybody a little bit of time here to jump on. Now, the topic du jour is, of course, the election, and that boy, a week from today, the chaos starts. So, woo, it's gonna be interesting. I was I was looking at a I was looking at an article over the weekend, and my boss was talking about this today about how China is handling COVID. They're not doing testing. They're
Hmm.
using all like contact tracing and an AI and stuff, and they're kind of using COVID as a way to give them an almost insurmountable lead in COVID, or at least an AI. I'm sorry, an
Hmm.
AI.
Hmm.
Uh, but they're not doing as much testing. They're literally doing it with data, and of course that they can do that because they don't have any compunction or they don't have a bill of rights. There's no one can say anything if the government's harvesting all this data about where everybody is, because that's how they're doing it through strict authoritarian control. They've been able to essentially squash the darn thing because they
Hmm.
know
Hmm.
where everybody is, and no one has any right to say, well, you can't do that with my data.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So of course this is coming up because we are a Western society, and you know how we are here in the States. but it's interesting, isn't it? What you can do with data, and how incredibly powerful it can be. But then we have rights, and we have privacy, and all
Yeah,
that
yeah,
good
and
stuff.
I totally understand because I come from Malaysia, and back in Malaysia they're pretty strict with their contact tracing also. So with the recent spike, every time there has been a spike or any kind of report, the contract tracing kicks in, and it's compulsory for people to sort of register their movement. So if you go to a restaurant, if you go to a mall to purchase something, you actually need to write your name down or give some kind of identification information, and
Wow.
that goes into a database. But then when there's an outbreak, the government actually puts out a reports with pretty precise information saying that, okay, from this location, X amount of people got infected, and this X amount of people spread it out to this people, and they name these little clusters around the area, and they track the movement, and yeah,
Hmm.
it's interesting to see the data, but I understand the implications. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, sure. So Malaysia,
yeah.
how's it going over there? Are they getting
We
good
did
control
we
of it?
did really well when it first came out. But then as usual, right? People there's COVID fatigue. People just lapse on just being careful or whatever when they're out, and then now there's this massive spike again that started to happen. So it's worse. It's worse now than it was in the beginning for us back home.
Okay, so diligence is the way forward, I guess, is the
Yeah,
punchline there.
yeah,
Yeah, you can see that. And you can really see that.
yeah. It's
So,
hard because certain people just it's stressful, right? Like for me personally, I don't find it an issue staying at home because I like being at home. I'm a nerd, but for a lot of people who like to go out, it's stressful that you don't get to go out, and then yeah,
yeah, yeah, sure. I'm a hardcore introvert, and so I can kind of get along. I can get away with this kind of stuff for a while, but it's even getting to me, even the hardcore introvert that I am. So I've got a couple of gaming rigs, and I set my youngest is kind of an extrovert, so she's doing the whole gaming thing, and so it'll be interesting. It will be interesting to see how this thing plays out.
yep.
I'm looking at the list out here, and I see some familiar names. I see my Mr. Paul Plowman from ABS. So good to see you, buddy. Sagar, my brother in arms with the Houston DevOps days and a lot of the stuff we've done together. Good to see you, my friend.
See you, man.
You are a rose. Like and I'm like,
I'll get my video on. Don't worry.
there he is. All right.
How you doing, man?
Good, great so far. Great so far. I can't wait to see what Mr. McCutchen has for us today. It's going to be a fantastic presentation.
No
This was
question.
one of those challenges, and so let's get rolling here, guys. Let's just make this thing happen. So welcome to the Houston DevOps Meetup. What are we doing here? So what I did in 2017 is I probably had a couple drinks too many, and I thought, I need to start a DevOps Meetup. And so, I went out and started the darn thing in 2017, and we've been doing it for 3 years now, over 3 years. And the idea was, the cloud is so freaking cool, and things are moving so quickly, and there's so many things you can do, and like everything's right and everything's wrong, and it appeared to me that there was so much that you could do that it'd be pretty easy to be doing the wrong thing unless you knew the right people. So I thought what would be cool would be to get together every month, get a bunch of like-minded IT professionals together and start talking about what you're doing, what you're not doing, what you see working, what you've heard, and the tooling behind the IT profession and how cloud is impacting it, and how we can be better, how we can deliver more performant, resilient, reliable software and have to think less. And so that's kind of DevOps, moving in that automated direction, finding ways, finding people out there. Let's say, for instance, you wanted to do a Kubernetes cluster. Not that that's necessarily a great idea, right? But you wanted to spin one up. Well, if you didn't know how to do that, if you were part of the DevOps community, well, you probably know somebody who did. And I do. I know all kinds of people that are great at that. So if I want a Kubernetes cluster, I'll just go talk to one of them. I'm not going to try to relearn that. I've got other things I'm working on. So the DevOps community is about that. It's about that community. It's about injecting those people in your life and reminding ourselves always, no matter where you are on this journey, you have perspective and you have information that other people will find valuable. Believe it or not, you might feel like you don't know anything, but just the perspective of somebody coming in from a different kind of angle on what you're doing or what you've learned or what you've heard is really where the magic happens, in my opinion. So the Houston DevOps Meetup is not just, it's as much about getting together and investing in one another, because the last thing you want to do, this comes from years of experience in systems, man. Don't go and climb a mountain and then find yourself alone at the top. That's awful. It's a terrible feeling. So if we're gonna climb this mountain, man, if we're gonna be victorious, find somebody you can drag along with you, and you might be the one drugged. Well, not that that's a bad thing.
Oh, wait, drugged or dragged?
Well, yeah, not there's anything wrong with that. Sign up guy. Okay, but that's it is about community. So we get together every month. A lot of the people that are involved with this meetup also are part of the Houston DevOps Days conference that we're going to be trying to relaunch in April. So I guess we'll see how that goes. but stay tuned. So we normally meet the last Tuesday in the month. We've got a couple. I mean, we're literally getting back together, I think, on November 10th, a week after the election. We've got another presentation, and we've got another one scheduled for early December. The meetup itself has about 985 people, so we're pushing towards that big 1,000 barrier there, and just fantastic things happening. So so I hope you enjoyed today's presentation. And a couple ground rules here. Before we jump in here, I'm going to try to get everybody to turn on your camera so I can get a nice screenshot for the presentation on the YouTube channel there. But Robert McCutchen, he is presenting today. Robert's been a frequent visitor to the DevOps Houston DevOps Meetup, and I had this idea because I had started messing with Terraform, and I developed a script that had 4 different things that it deployed to 4 different clouds, and I thought that was cool. And I had this idea, and I kind of punted it over to Robert, and being the good sport that he is, he agreed to take it on. So you're not allowed to laugh. You know, these things, you never know how demos are going to go, right? So we're going to see what he learned, and try to figure out if that's going to wind up helping us, right? So that the rules are that you can laugh, but you got to mute your microphone, and you can only publicly shame people if you've presented at the DevOps Meetup and endured the scorn of the community. Not that there's a whole lot of that. So everybody, if you could hit your cameras there, if you've got one. I'd like to get a nice screenshot of everybody. Oh, look at you, beautiful people. Holy cow. Look at you, beautiful people. Okay, so let me make sure I get this right. Anybody else want to jump in there? Make sure I got the screen cap. Fantastic. All right, then I think we are ready to go.
If we know Robert, though, can we heckle him?
No. You got it?
I believe so. Let me see if I can share my screen.
All right.
Okay. Let's see. Yep. There we go.
Yeah, I'm seeing it.
Okay.
Hey, what was that Slack channel you had open?
The Slack channel? Oh, work. So let me minimize this and we'll get started. Okay. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank you for taking the time out of your day to come and learn about a little bit about Terraform. I'm sure you've all had long days, so putting in a little extra time to learn another skill really reflects how valued this skill is. A little bit of information about myself. My name is Robert McCutchen. I'm currently working as a DevOps engineer for a company called Point Predictive out of San Diego. I passed the Terraform certification exam, I believe, last July, if I remember correctly. I am far from a Terraform expert. We had to learn how to use Terraform for one of the projects we were working on. So you will not leave, I'm going to tell you this up front, you probably won't leave this meeting being a Terraform expert, but I'm hoping that at the end of my presentation, you'll have a firm grasp of what Terraform is, how Terraform is used, and what you can do to deepen your understanding of Terraform. Okay, I've broken down my presentation into 3 main parts. We're going to first start by discussing infrastructure as code and what Terraform brings to and the value of Terraform. Then we're going to go through a presentation where I'm going to show you how to deploy infrastructure on some of the most popular cloud services. I've already put all of the code together, so there won't be any live coding. Instead, we're just going to go through the code that I have prepared, and I'll explain as I go through. I'm trying my best to keep things as simple as possible. I want you to know that at the end of my presentation, I will have time for questions, but at any point in the presentation, you should feel comfortable to ask questions. I won't be able to see, since I'm sharing my screen, I won't be able to see if you send me a message through Zoom, but I should be able to hear you if you ask a question. That being said, let's get started. Okay, so infrastructure as code has grown in popularity. Most of you have probably already used it on projects if you're in the DevOps field. Infrastructure as code allows you to go in and write a complex game plan for deploying cloud infrastructure. Once you have that code, that game plan in code form, you can share it across a whole team. You can make changes, and you can make sure that everyone is using the same configuration across an enterprise. It makes, while it's a lot of work up front, it makes things so much easier when you go to deploy your infrastructure or when you go to make changes as a team. AWS's most popular infrastructure as code, as many of you know, is AWS CloudFormation. It's a wonderful tool. I use it almost every day. But with AWS CloudFormation, you're limited to AWS infrastructure. Terraform is a little different. Terraform is a free service that allows you to build infrastructure as code in more than 3 dozen cloud services. And as we'll see later on in my presentation, it allows you to build infrastructure for one project across many different cloud services, allowing you and your team to develop cross-platform infrastructures. Terraform is a free service. It's developed by the HashiCorp organization. It's written in Go. While it may be free to use, HashiCorp does offer its own paid cloud services and paid enterprise services, which offer you and your team the ability to write and share Terraform code in their own cloud service. So without further ado, let's go to it. Downloading and installing Terraform is fairly straightforward. Whether you're using a Mac or Windows, or if you're installing it in Linux, Terraform has documentation on their website for walking you through the steps. You can install it manually by setting the path. I just use brew install on my Mac. It took all of 2 minutes to install. It's not a very big package. One thing you do need to remember, though, is if you choose not to manually install it, it will install the latest full version, the latest complete version. It may not be the version that you and your team are using. So it's important to know that before you go to install the service. Check with your team to make sure that you're all on the same page. So I've already gone in, I've already installed it.
And actually, hey, Robert, let me jump in there. That's actually one of those pro tips, guys. I lost like a month with AWS CloudFormation because of versions getting off. It's bad when it gets sideways. So
Yeah.
you got to be careful of the versions on these tools.
Yes, and it seems like Terraform is already on version 13. They come up with newer versions every couple of months or so. So the likelihood of getting the wrong version or having a version mix up is much higher with Terraform than it would be with AWS CloudFormation. That's a very good point, and I appreciate you bringing it up. Okay, so Terraform is free service. We've already gone through the installation. Let's go now to our code. Okay, or rather, yeah, let's go straight to the code. So I put everything together in VS Code. I have everything written down. We're going to go through AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. Okay. I don't claim to be an expert in Google Cloud, but I work with AWS extensively. Okay. If we take a look at this very simple project deployment that I put together, you'll notice that it consists of two main parts. The first part is the provider. Every AWS or every Terraform file needs requires a provider. The provider includes information such as what cloud service you're going to use, and then the login information that you need to use to log into your personal or company account. You need to be very careful when putting in your credentials, because by default, your credentials are not encrypted. Okay, you may have seen on YouTube or Udemy instructors filling in AWS credentials in plain script. That may work for them because they have the benefit of being able to delete those access keys after they've created the video. But if you're working in a professional environment, which I imagine you will be, you need to take care of that information lest it get out. I've saved for my AWS credentials in an environment folder. HashiCorp also offers their own service for managing secrets and login information called HashiCorp Vault. I'm not going to get into that because it would be its own lecture. But if you are interested in HashiCorp Vault, Terraform has recently come out with a HashiCorp Vault certification that you can study. And we'll be going through certifications later this evening. So the provider indicates or tells Terraform which cloud service you're going to use, maybe which region you're going to be running your service in, and of course, the credentials that it needs to log into your account. Okay. Look at all of these different cloud providers that you can use. Each one is a little different in what they require to get logged in and to create Terraform code. Okay, so we don't have enough time to go through everything. Okay, we are going to go to AWS. If you click on AWS, it will provide you extensive documentation on just what you need to include in the provider. Okay, let's see, source. You can, if you and your team are working on this different versions, you can even indicate in your Terraform provider which version of Terraform you want to run it in. How to authenticate, and for AWS, Azure, and Google, there's actually a number of different ways that you can authenticate to into your account. And again, we don't have time to go through it in detail. Now, that's the first part of any Terraform configuration. Okay, after we've used the provider to log in to our cloud account, okay, we can then start building resources. Every object in Terraform is referred to as a resource, okay, and it takes the resource keyword. Okay, afterwards you need to indicate what service it is you want to build in your cloud. Okay, and the service or the cloud object has to be written correctly or it won't work. Okay, and in a moment we'll go through the different types of AWS resources that you can use when building a Terraform configuration file. The next, for each resource that you create, you need to give it an identifying name that you can use within your code. Okay, so here I've just named this Terraform VPC, and then in curly brackets, you're going to include the configuration details that are needed for this resource. Different resources take different values, different configurations. Some are required, some are not. So what I'll be doing is I'll be building a VPC in my AWS US East Cloud. Inside that VPC, I'm going to be building a subnet. And inside that subnet, I'm going to be building an EC2 server. Okay, and notice that within each resource, I can reference other resources within the code. Okay, so here the VPC ID, I use the object name, which is AWS VPC, okay, plus the name that I gave this particular instance of this particular VPC instance, okay, and then I pulled out the ID of that instance, okay, and you can do that with subnet as well. Terraform by default will go through and it will figure out the order to set these up based on how you've configured it. So you don't, so I could easily change the order of my resources and it would still run and it would still create first the VPC, then the subnet, and then the instance. If in your project you want to explicitly tell Terraform to wait until another object is created before creating a particular object, you can use an depend on command to explicitly tell it to hold off, to wait until another object has been created. So let's go to it. Okay, since we've gone through the provider, we can now take a look at the different types of resources. Okay, we're on AWS, and AWS resources, it's an extensive list of different resources that you can run on the cloud. And this is true for all of the cloud services out there. For this presentation, we're going to be creating an EC2 resource. So we click on EC2, we go down to instance, and the documentation will walk you through everything that you need to include to create that EC2 server in your CloudFormation. It goes through the arguments reference. Some are required, some are optional. For anyone who's familiar with AWS, and I'm sure many of you are, okay, whenever you build an EC2 server, you're always going to have to indicate what AMI you're using. You're going to have to tell what size the server it is you're going to use. If you're just playing around with it, I would encourage you to use the T2 micro that I'm using because it's within the free tier. So you don't want to make the mistake of using too large a server when you're just playing around with it, just learning about it. Okay, so in addition to AWS, I've also set up Azure. Okay, Azure, we have the provider, we have the resource. I'm setting up a Azure resource group within Azure using the same setup. For Azure, I had to go in and log into my account and then get permission to connect to Azure. So setting up, while it's easy to use Terraform once you have it set up, it is kind of tricky when you just go to set it up, because every service will have a different way of logging on. Every service will have a different way of providing credentials. With the Google Cloud, for anyone who's experienced with Google Cloud, they actually send you a JSON document from which you can pull the credentials. Okay, I have the JSON document here. They have access keys and secret keys, just like other cloud services. Okay, so setting it up was a bit challenging, but once it's up, it's just following the documentation.
So Robert, on the
Yes.
Azure one, is that a browser session that you have to set up, or is that a command window session where you're logging in, AZ login?
Yes, it's an AZ login that you have to run. So, but once you're logged in, it's not an issue. It's just something that everyone needs to keep in mind when setting up cloud infrastructure, is that Terraform goes out of its way to simplify things, but some things just can't be simplified. Different cloud services will have different requirements that you need to keep in mind when configuring.
So you've got the big three here, and all three of them have different authentication mechanisms.
Yes, all three have different configurations. Of course, if I were using Terraform Vault, it would make things so much easier. I could just store the access keys and the secret keys for all of the cloud services that I'll be using in one place. And then I could pull from that one place in a more uniform way. But for our purposes, I didn't think it was necessary to go into um, Vault services. Okay, but it's out there, and it's a tool that if you're using this professionally, it would behoove you to learn. Okay, so so now that we've gone through the different services, how they're set up, how they're organized. Okay, I thought we would go in and just run 4 of the basic commands. These are 4 of the commands that you need to create cloud infrastructure using Terraform and destroy cloud infrastructure. There are a number of other commands, but these are the 4 basics that you need to know to get started. So here we go. I have my terminal open. Oh dear. Okay. Okay. So you can first make sure that Terraform is installed, Terraform version or Terraform help. Okay. And this will let you know you are using the newest version, version 13.5. Okay. So we have Terraform installed. The first step on any Terraform project, once you've set up your code, your configuration, is you need to run Terraform init. What Terraform init does is it pulls from your provider configuration, and it goes and it logs you in to the respective cloud infrastructure. It also builds a .terraform file with all the plugins and registration information that that Terraform needs to create and destroy and alter the cloud infrastructure as you need. Okay, so the Terraform init, fairly quick. Once you're done, you should get a successfully initialized message. Great. So now we have our .terraform file. Okay. Now we're connected to our cloud services. If we had a problem with our provider configuration, it would not have let us initialize. So we know that we're logged in. Okay. And now we're ready to get started. Okay. So let me clear this out. Okay, the second of the 4 commands that we'll be going over, okay, is just the Terraform plan. Okay, Terraform plan, when run, will give you a plan, a long list of the things Terraform will do or will create based on the configuration in your .tf files. Okay, oh my. Okay, so let's go quickly through it. Okay, let me scroll up. Okay, we have our AWS. We have all of our objects from AWS, Azure, and Google. As you'll see, many of the variables that we didn't, configurations that we didn't include, the optional configurations that we did not include in our .tf files, it will be created, Terraform will create it automatically. So unless you've indicated something else. Okay, so we have our EC2 server that we want to create with the AMI that I've indicated. Okay, this is going to be a T2 micro. Okay, we block devices for storage. Okay, we have not included any of this information. We have the subnet with our CIDR block. Okay, all these details about what Terraform plans on doing, you can go through to make sure it's set up as you want it to be set up. At the bottom, it will let you know whether or not it plans on adding new objects infrastructure in the cloud, okay, whether or not it's going to alter it, or whether or not this action will result in infrastructure being destroyed. Okay, one thing that you do need to keep in mind is that if you use Terraform to deploy cloud infrastructure, and then someone on your team goes into the console and makes changes, deletes infrastructure, or adds infrastructure, Terraform won't automatically know that there has been a change made. Okay, so this is something that you need to keep in mind. So just because it says it's going to add 6 objects in our cloud distribution doesn't mean there isn't already infrastructure running in these cloud services. And just when it says, when we go to destroy it, when it says there are 6 destroyed, that doesn't mean everything in your cloud infrastructure has been deployed or has been destroyed. So you need to be careful lest you get a large bill at the end of the week or at the end of the month when you find that there was infrastructure not being used still running in your cloud system. Okay, so we've reviewed the cloud plan, the Terraform plan. We like what we see. We want to use this plan to create the infrastructure. The third of the 4 commands that we'll be going through today, okay, is the Terraform apply command. Now, when you run the Terraform apply command and the Terraform destroy command, it should prompt you This may take a while it goes through and oh, no, it is. I just had to scroll down. Okay. So let's see. Yes. Okay. It asks with Terraform apply and Terraform destroy, it asks you for a confirmation. So it'll take a few seconds. It lets you know whether or not your infrastructure has been set up correctly. If there was a problem with the configuration in your resource, this is where it would let you know. If there is a problem, it will just stop the deployment. So if there is a problem, it's not like there would be an incomplete deployment. Okay, the whole deployment would fail. So, which is good. You don't want to have only half of your cloud infrastructure deployed and then have to figure out which infrastructure was deployed. Okay, and then fix it later. Okay, so that took 30, 40 seconds. Okay, we got the message, the apply complete. Okay, resources 6 have been added. So let's just go and check to see, okay, that this infrastructure has been added. Okay, I have my AWS EC2, my AWS console out, okay, under EC2. Loading instances, this is the one I terminated earlier. And here we got our running EC2 instance. Yay. Okay, so that worked. Okay, on our Google, okay, we can go to Google and then we can, okay, refresh our Google Cloud and we should see the instance that we just created in our, okay, it's taking its time loading for some reason. And there we go. Okay, our Terraform instance in US Central 1C. Okay, and here's our internal IP. And then Azure. Okay, we can refresh and we should be able to see the resource that we built in our Azure resource group. Here we go. And it has the name that I gave it, Terraform demo. Okay, so everything here has been created according to the configuration that I laid out in my terraform.tf files. Cool. So let's go to the last step. Okay, we've initialized Terraform, we've planned the deployment, we've applied the deployment. Okay, and the last step, we want to destroy the deployment. Okay, as easy as it was to deploy this infrastructure, okay, destroying it all is just as easy. So we run Terraform destroy. We will be prompted for a confirmation. Okay. Oh, or maybe I already put in the confirmation. Okay, and this is really the beauty of Terraform. Okay, the ability. Oh, yes. So this has the plan. Okay, it lets you know everything that will be destroyed when you confirm. So you can look through it just to make sure one last time that you're not destroying anything that you'll need later. But as I was saying, this is the beauty of using Terraform. It allows you to make cross-platform deployments in seconds. It took us 40 seconds to deploy our infrastructure, and it takes us just as long to destroy it. It is a lot of work to set up, okay, but once you have it working, it becomes, it makes your life a whole lot easier. Now, if you're using at work a certain cloud platform, it's probably best to use the native infrastructure as code. If you're using AWS every day, as I do, it makes more sense to use AWS CloudFormation. At my former place of employment, however, we were trying to land a contract with a Chinese company who wanted us to build infrastructure in Alibaba Cloud. And rather than spend 2 months or so learning the ins and outs of that particular cloud formation, it just made a whole lot more sense to learn how to deploy the infrastructure that we needed using Terraform. Okay, so there we go. It's still in the process of destroying, so perhaps destroying takes a little longer than deploying. Okay, but if we go back to our consoles, give me 1 second. Okay. Okay, and we refresh. Okay, there we go. Okay, it has been the EC2 server that we set up has been terminated, has been destroyed. Let's check our Google Cloud platform. Okay. Things are running slowly. Okay. Okay, so it doesn't look like there's anything. Okay, resources, there we go. So there are no longer any resources in our Google Cloud account. Let's check with Azure. Okay, there's the Terraform demo that we created earlier. Okay, let's go back. Okay, let's refresh. Well, I guess Terraform is still in the process of destroying that. Okay, we'll come back to it later. Yeah, it's still going through. Okay, so let's go now to the last part of my presentation. And again, just to reemphasize what I said at the beginning, this is just scratching the surface. You also have the ability to set up variable files if you're dealing with a lot of variables or a lot of different configurations across regions. It makes sense to set those up in variable fields. Okay, you have inputs and outputs where you can transfer information, the outputs of one resource to another resource. But for the cloud service that you'll be working with, it's best to learn the ins and outs of that particular service, and we just don't have enough time to go through it. Okay, but there are resources that I would strongly encourage you to go through if you're interested in learning more about Terraform. These are the resources that I use to prepare for the Terraform Associate certification. The first one, and I can't recommend this highly enough, is Zeal Vora's HashiCorp Terraform Udemy course. It's only 10 hours, but in that 10 hours, he covers all of the material that you need to know in order to pass the test. Okay. There's also practice tests that I found helpful. Brian Kranz's questions, many of the questions that he covered on his practice tests were almost verbatim the type of kind of questions that I encountered on the Terraform certification exam. And another one that I found particularly helpful as far as reviewing the day before the exam was this Medium article. And if you're interested in getting the link, I can send it to you later on. It's 250 questions, 250 probing questions to assess just how prepared you are for the test. If you can make it through these 250 practice questions with no problem, you are more than ready to sit for the exam. The exam for the certification is fairly new. It was introduced this past spring due to the pandemic. You can now sit for the exam at home. The price, it's reasonable, especially when it comes to um, DevOps certifications. They can get, as we all know, fairly pricey. HashiCorp, the certification, I believe, is only about $100. And oftentimes you can find a coupon to get a discount for that. When you're taking it at home, you will have a proctor in the room, and they will go through all of the, they will make sure that you do not have any outside resources, that you have no paper, that you do not have your phone. It has to be absolutely quiet. If there's any sound or any interruption during the test, the course will be the test will be canceled, and you will not be given a refund. So it's important that you find a nice, quiet place in your house with few distractions. Um, uh, just keep that in mind when you're going through. The test is fairly straightforward. It's about 80 questions. I finished it in less than an hour. Um, Really, the Terraform certification, uh, it, yeah, it may just be a money grab, but since getting this certification, I've certainly been getting a lot more attention from recruiters and potential employees. This is an in-demand skill, and I think it's well worth getting this certification, especially considering how affordable it is. Okay. And then last, of course, I want to encourage you all to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm always looking to make more connections, and I frequently post on there about all of my all of my activities. Okay, so now I thought I'd open it up to a bit of question and answers. I know I've been talking a while. I'm curious to see how many people are still here. Okay. So let me stop
Nope.
sharing my screen.
Bring on your cameras if they got them. Okay, well, Robert, so you had mentioned that you've done a lot with AWS. So you've worked with
Yes.
CloudFormation then, right?
Yes, that
Okay,
CloudFormation is what I use and what I would recommend anyone who works with AWS every day. CloudFormation is much easier to use than Terraform. As I mentioned, Terraform is helpful in certain situations. If you're trying to create a cloud infrastructure in a service that you're not familiar with, or if you're trying to create cross-platform cloud services. But if you're working with AWS on a daily basis like I am, it's best to stick with CloudFormation.
okay. That's
So,
good feedback.
right. Especially since AWS CloudFormation is really the working in the back with most of AWS's infrastructure. It just makes sense to stick with AWS CloudFormation. Are there any other questions?
That was going to be my question, but you already answered it because we use mostly AWS, and like I was at the point of making a decision if I should go with Terraform, if it's going to be easier to implement than CloudFormation. But then I stuck with CloudFormation because I didn't want to learn two things.
I think you did. I think you made the right choice. I think you made the right choice. Terraform is a nifty tool, but as I said, it's a tool for a particular purpose. So
the only thing we might have it is because it might get to a point that customers might want the provisioning scripts in different platforms, and in that case, I don't know, it might be easier to just have a Terraform rather than having specific ones for each platform.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. And that's similar to the situation that I faced a few months ago when I my team and I decided to learn Terraform, the client wanted the infrastructure in Alibaba Cloud, and no one on the team was trained in Alibaba Cloud. So in that instance, yeah, Terraform did come in handy. But
So,
now,
as far as between CloudFormation and Terraform, you say CloudFormation is even easier. I was thinking maybe Terraform would be easier.
well, if I said it was easier, then I may have misspoken. I think it makes more sense to use, if you're just using AWS like I am, it's best to stick with native infrastructure as code.
Okay.
Because even if you wanted to create code across platforms, as I showed you today, the configuration for your Terraform, for the provider, for the resources, and not to mention getting into the variables, it's going to be different across platforms. So it's not like you can just click a switch and suddenly you have your application running in Azure, or then you can have it running in Google Cloud. Um, so, so that's just something you need to keep in mind. There is a lot of work that goes into it initially to set up the configuration for your for each cloud platform. But thankfully, there's plenty of documentation on the Terraform website. And at this point, Terraform has matured to the point where there's a large community online that you can turn to if you get stuck. So, which wasn't the case only a few years ago. Are there any other questions?
Robert, what's your experience when you get something up and running and deployed, and somebody deletes something, or there is a change like on the on AWS that you don't have in your script? How does Terraform handle that difference well? Is it able to get caught up?
Well, Terraform doesn't keep track of what is running in your cloud. It remembers the configuration in the file, the .terraform file that's downloaded when you run the Terraform init command. But you can, if someone on your team goes and creates infrastructure without telling you, yeah, we didn't really run into that when we were using Terraform on our project, but there's no way for Terraform to know.
It will blow it away. If
Yeah.
it's touching something that, if next time you rerun that script, there's a good chance it will destroy it if it's in the same resource group, if it's in the same like general vicinity of your automated code, it will destroy it.
Right. Yeah. And then if by chance the object that you've created has the same configuration as the object in your Terraform code, it can get pretty nasty pretty quickly. So, are there any other questions? Oh,
Quick
my.
question. Quick
Oh,
question. So,
yes.
if you have multiple environments that you use your Terraform code base to build, right? For example, you have your production, you have your UAT, and you have your development environments, right? So, do you maintain 3 sets of Terraform code to apply that? Because the configuration change from like the credentials and things like that change, right? How would you approach that? And have you heard of something called TerraGrunt? Because like in my office, my workplace, the architects, they use something called TerraGrunt. So TerraGrunt is by this company called Gruntworks. It's by the author of Terraform Up and Running, the book. It's basically a wrapper that goes around Terraform, and it allows you to remove static configuration from your Terraform code and put it into TerraGrunt and use that as a template. So your changes only apply in TerraGrunt, and your Terraform code itself stays static. Because one of the challenges that many people face is having multiple code bases for different environments, right? So you duplicate your code multiple times, and then over time that becomes harder to to manage. So have you run into that problem in your workplace?
No, I haven't. And this is actually the first time I've heard of TerraGrant. I
Yeah,
think
Terraform, it's pretty
I
cool.
think
Yeah.
I think that's that the way you've described it, it sounds like a really cool tool.
Yeah.
And I think that just goes to show that infrastructure as code, if it's not the it's the future. So yeah, you don't want to have your team building infrastructure piecemeal, one part by one part, and especially at my company where you have to have automatic backups, infrastructure as code, AWS, CloudFormation makes things so much easier. If there were ever an issue with our system, we could use the AWS CloudFormation to automatically generate new infrastructure in a matter of minutes. It's just, yeah, it's just amazing.
Cool. Cool.
But I will look up TerraGrant. That
Yeah, I
sounds
think you might like it. Their
exciting.
motto is keeping code dry.
No, that sounds like a really cool tool.
So how would that compare to like just using variables in Terraform, right? So that are environment based. And since you're going to be running it in the CI/CD platform that will have different pipelines for the different branches, couldn't you accomplish the same thing by using those environment variables and input variables in your Terraform code? I've never run into a use case like that. That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah, because the way the architects explained it to us is because they got to a state where there's just so much duplication of code in Terraform because they're running it across a few different environments, and even it got to a point even the variables themselves were getting duplicated. I think it's how they explained it to us, was it was getting harder to manage. It was easier to just use a template across the whole code base. So in Terraform you only have one code base, and then in TerraGrant you can then say use this code base and dev, use this code base in production, and use this code base in the UAT. So it's the same code base but applied in 3 different environments, and TerraGrant allows you to do it that way. So it's hard to explain until you actually sort of try it out. This one, yeah, TerraGrant, yeah.
Yeah, no, we just did a basic introduction to it. But as I mentioned, once you get into variables, things can get hairy very
Yeah,
quick.
because my use of Terraform is also just very, very basic. Is it's the guys who are writing the code, they were saying that it just got to a state where it's just we had the code base was so large that they were finding it harder to manage.
Okay.
All right.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Well, if there's no questions, then I'm going to pass it back to Dan. I'm sure he has a few messages, a few things he wants to say. So let me go up. Okay. Give me a second. Okay. There you go. Dan is now the host.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, and if there's no more questions, and that covers it for this this version of the Houston DevOps Meetup. Thank you for attending. Thank you for participating. And it's always great to have a good amount of conversation at the end, learning, discussing, and making those connections that are going to serve us well as we move forward. As a word of encouragement, like I'd mentioned, we have like 2 weeks from now, we have gone on the meetup, and then within another month in early December, we have yet another meetup. So a couple more things coming up, but by way of encouragement, I find Houston to be just a fascinating town. I love Houston. I think it's really cool being here. I tell everybody I was born in Pittsburgh, but I got to Houston as fast as I could. I got here when I was about 9. And what I find in Houston is a lot of IT professionals, and they're great at their jobs, and they're proud. And we have in Houston, we've got this locus of energy, and we've got this locus of healthcare, and we've got aerospace. We've got all these really cool things that we do better than anybody out there. And if we do nothing else, we focus on being IT professionals, being as good as we can with what Houston can do. We just put our minds to it. There are enormous challenges out there, and we are the generation to solve it. If COVID wants to pick a fight, it picked a fight with the wrong people, man, because we're going to fix this. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to continuing to grow and expand this community. If you'd like to present, please reach out to me on the Meetup channel, and let's talk about what you want to do. I'd love to see more people presenting and sharing what they know and learning more just by way of trying to expand their knowledge. So thank you for joining. Talk to you soon.
Thanks again for your time. It was great.
Thank you, Robert.
Oh, thanks.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Dan.
Have a great night.